Hello, I'm Tommy Moore from the Bartitsu Lab, and today I'm going to talk you through some of the techniques you can use to defend yourself when using a torch. Now, torches are rather ubiquitous items. Lots of us have torches. They come in all shapes and sizes and materials. Today I'm going to talk you through some of the most useful torches for self-defense, how to use them, how to apply them, for some things for you to practice, experiment with at home. Some things will work for you, some things won't, but hopefully I've given you some universal principles with which you can play. Okay. I cannot find my normal well-to-do torch, so I'm going to show you my self-defensy type of torch. So this particular type of torch, we've got the light at the front, as you can see, and it's got different lighting modes. It's a metal casing, it's got a gripped handle, some degree of cord here to wrap around my wrist, and a kind of notched end, if you can see here. So this would be a kind of default self-defense style torch. You need to be very mindful of the legalities of having and using a torch like this, and it's very obviously marketed and seen, and just from its pure aesthetic, more weapon than torch. But some of the things we'll be going through today, it won't really matter what type of torch that you use. But again, this is quite a cool nifty one, and I do like it. So some of the first things to look at when using your torch. For me, there are a couple of grips to bear in mind. No matter whether you've got a torch which is like this, a small handheld jobby, or whether you've got a torch which is like this, or a larger one, one of the first things I advise is you get one with a harder metal casing. So again, you want one that's a bit more ruggedized, a bit tougher, and ideally one which takes a relatively sizable battery, because it's from the battery that we get the weight which turns it from a light tube into the type of bludgeoning self-defense tool that we want. So again, looking at our torch, we want one which has a harder casing, a decent sized battery. Minimum you want to be using AA if you can. Give it a bit of heft, give it a bit of weight. Okay, so one of the first things for using a torch for self-defense, or I would say pre-self-defense, because when we're using a torch, we're investigating stuff we cannot see, and we're using a torch to see. So if there's been a break-in, if there's a power outage, we use our torch to orientate ourselves, to find out where we are, where our friends and family are, where the exits are, where the supplies are, and where the people that we don't want to be are. So again, we use our torch. One of the first things I'd advise is getting the habit of holding the torch closer to your head. Now, you might see this as common sense, and you might see this as a bit ridiculous. You know, you see a lot of people, especially in American videos, and they'd go around doing tactical shooting and so on. But there is a common sense need for this, in that if I hold my torch here, it's in line where my eyes are. So where I move my eyes, the torch also follows, okay? So it gets me used to decent discipline of having my head. If I tuck my elbow in tight enough, I've essentially got a decent boxing style guard here. So no matter what hand I've got it in, I've got it in a decent guard. Often when we're using a torch, obviously it's dark and we can't see lots of things around us, only what is illuminated by the beam. So one of the most important things I recommend is A, aligning the torch to your eye line wherever possible, keeping your elbow tucked in, and making sure it guards your neck, a very vulnerable area. Second point is always make sure you've got a lead hand ahead of the torch. So don't lead with the torch, lead with your hand, because that allows you to open doors, explore things. If people surprise you, and they probably will because it's dark, I've got room to hold them back, push them away, strike them, poke them, grab them, do whatever I need to do to allow myself the millisecond I need to make use of the torch as a weapon. So to recap, ideally have it at eyesight level, so when the eye goes, the torch follows. B, make sure that the elbow is tucked in nice and tight, and that your chin is somewhat down, because people might get you from behind. Again, if your chin's down, it stops that strangulation, and if people attack you from the front, it prevents or helps safeguard you against easy, quick and cheap knockouts. If my chin's down, my neck's pretty tight, I can take a knock and hopefully I won't be knocked out. So elbow in, guard up, torch pointing out, hand forward. So our lead hand is forward, it can investigate the environment and safeguard us against threats. Okay, now we can move through to some of the striking techniques that we use from the torch. And the main point is try and strike with the battery orientated end. Don't hit with the useful bit of the torch if you can. Some are designed for it and they've got these notches here, But the risk of me damaging the torch, and if I'm using a torch, I need that light. The risk is very, very high here if I start battering things with the front. Now, this is designed, really, it looks like it's designed to be used at the front, but in reality, the best use of the weapon, the batteries are here. I've got an weighted end here, a kind of nodular end here. Even if it was just a straight tubular torch, if I've got those batteries at the end, that's the weighted bit, and therefore that's the bit I need to practice with. So using my light here, I need to get used to be able to fire my strikes. Now my strikes are going to be the same as what you see in most battle scenarios. Again, I don't lead with my torch. It's easy for it to be blocked. So someone can put their hand in front of that. If I lead with it, suddenly we're both in darkness. Someone can grab that easily, take my torch away. I've just lost a weapon. So I'm leading with my non-weapon hand here. I've come across my threat, and again, now we're making sure that the strikes are short and they're sharp. I don't want this leaving my body too much because I cannot then counter-orientate myself. So I've got my torch. Again, we're looking at kind of X-shaped shots here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all you really need to know. And again, our targets are around the temples, along the jawline, and into the throat. Worst case scenario, into the solar plexus, but that's a long game. You don't really want to be playing that game. So from here, make sure that you don't swing outwards, but keep it short and sharp, using the weight of the battery, so it's almost casting it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can imagine, the diagonal strikes, temple, jawbone. The vertical strike tends to come down the crown, down the front of the face. It's more of an instinctive shot. So sometimes that's a shot of surprise more than strategy. You know, this way and this way are far more valuable at this height. And at this height, I've got enough room to put some power into it. Okay, so again, we've got the height, we've got the defense, we've got something in the way if someone should surprise us, and our chin is down if someone should grab us. And we've got the light as follows: 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. With the thrusts, make sure that you don't extend the torch. My body drives in the thrust. My arm doesn't really leave this length here. It's my body weight, it's my mass that drives the thrust, not this. Again, I want to be able to get from a sharp dig in the throat back to being on target. Which brings me to my next point, reorientation. So if you're using the torch, you've got your torch here, you've stopped your enemy here, you've held them, you've pushed them, you've found them, you've manipulated them in some way, you've grabbed them. When I hit, after I've hit sufficiently, I want to make sure I get the torch discipline back on the target, and that's where practicing the drill with the light on is really important. As soon as I've spotted and I've safeguarded, I've kept some distance between him and my weapon and my source of light. So here, I've kept that distance. Strike, 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 thrust, return that barrier and return visibility. Okay, so that's a key part of the drill which I train at the Bartitsu Lab. We find the person and immediately we retain our torch, we retain our weapon. So I found you, I push out and I twist my body a little bit. Okay, and I maintain that light source on you. I then go for my flurry of strikes, my combination. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I push straight back out and I end up in the original position, knowing where you are, keeping some degree of manipulation and distance from you, so if I need to do it again, hopefully after being bludgeoned 4 times with something hard with a heavy battery in it, you won't need to. But it's always good discipline to start and finish with that sight on that person and then move around to look for others, because typically in a home invasion scenario you could have 2, 3, 4 other people in the house. So bear in mind, this is a longer explanation of what could take all of 4 seconds. So you find the person immediately, you train the light on the person and you maintain the distance. I push them away. I want to keep them away from this useful tool because I need to orientate you. Where are you and where am I? I then need to plan out my next degree of shots. Gives me that second. If I do this and then realise you're in a motorbike helmet, I need to do something different. If I start bludgeoning away at a man in a motorbike helmet, it's going to cause no damage. This keeps my weapon away, gives me a millisecond to think about how I want to act. Strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, strike 4. And again, making sure you drive your mass behind the thrust, push away and twist away, and keep that torch back on the person. Once you're happy with that threat's been dealt with, look for others, get yourself to a point of safety. That's some tips on how to use a torch. And again, if you're using a much smaller, much more commonplace torch, the principles are exactly the same. So again, this is still metal, it's still somewhat ruggedized, it still hurts a person. I've got the light on the target, I still push away. My strikes are exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, albeit 4 is with the fist now. 1, 2, 3, 4, push off and shine. The disadvantage you have with this is you will most likely have to hit with the torchy end of the torch. Again, so it may not function as well as you like afterwards. So I advise if you're going to buy a little torch, buy a very high quality ruggedized one. A longer torch you can get away with smashing someone with the batteries and getting back on point. But again, the whole point of the discipline is keeping that guard up, keep it matching the eye line, keep it back, so keep this hand forward. Again, if you're moving around in the dark, you want this to open doors, push things out of the way. Feel where you are, is there a stair banister? So, that pushes the enemy away, and I've retracted my source of light and my weapon. 1, 2, 3, 4, push away and see if I need to continue or if I need to look elsewhere. So again, whether you're using a little torch or a big torch, the discipline is the same. If you find yourself, by habit or accident, carrying it at waist height, as some people naturally do, if they hear a noise in the garden and they're sleepy and they come out at night, they might lazily hold the torch in front. Again, at least try and get into the discipline of having the empty hand a little bit more forward. If you do find yourself starting from this position, the best techniques you can be doing are sharp upward thrusts. So again, get to a position here, sharp upward thrusts until we can get to a point where we can use the weapon in a more bludgeoning sense, in this better grip for the use of the weapon. So we might need to start our first strike here, bam, okay? So from a lazy, or what's that noise in the garden, once I've got that, if I'm not continuing the attack, and I can still use the pommel of this and strike repeatedly. So from here, in reality, a better situation all round is for me to start the encounter like this, because I've got the weapon at sufficient height and in sufficient level to the opponent's head where I can cause the best, most lasting, most impactful damage to get myself to safety. So, top tips: lead empty hand forward, rear hand up, guarding the face, chin down, like here. Lead with the empty hand. As soon as you come into contact with something you do not like, make sure you retain this weapon, this source of light. 1, 2, 3. With your thrust, get your body behind it, don't just extend, body behind it, and then repeat to see where you're at with that person before checking elsewhere. So that's the use of the torch for self-defense. It's a really great legal carry weapon. This one's a bit more weaponized, it's a bit more of a grey area, but any decent high quality torch should see you right. So make sure you've got one in your car, in your house, and that you train with it and you train how to use it, and that you also train at night as well as day. Again, you can only do what you've practiced. So if you do have a torch for self-defense, or if you do walk dogs at night or anything like that, make sure you train with it. Some of the principles are discussed should hopefully keep you safe.